On today's video, we're going to be starting to design a new fuse box from Rx7 because some idiot decided it would look better without one. I understand this might seem like quite the undertaking, but it had to happen because stuff like this that was made in the 80s and worked for what it needed to do in the 80s is just not necessarily what I want to have in my car. And that's why I'm going to be replacing it with this. There are a few reasons that I want to switch to this new fuse box. The first one is the size of the components used in the fuse box. This little guy right here is a 10 amp fuse that's used in the Rx7's original fuse box, where this little guy is what's used in the new one. Not to mention the way that the Rx7's electrical system was originally designed was pretty decentralized. You had very large fuse boxes, multiple of them spread around the car, and a bunch of really big just exposed relays. Like this would just go in the engine bay, and you can see these little socks are literally just to cover the components so they don't get wet. Like this is it's ridiculous. I can't believe that this is how they did it, but everything was all just scattered around everywhere, so it doesn't look good. Now instead of using relays like these that are just going to be exposed to the elements, I can use something like this, which is a good amount smaller, can still handle the same amount of amperage, and can all fit inside of one single fuse box. So I used to work at a Toyota dealership, and we would get cars in all the time that we'd have to replace harnesses on. A lot of the times we'd have to replace body harnesses, which means that we have to replace the entire fuse box on them. After we replace them, those harnesses just get thrown away, but most of the time we would keep them and take spare parts off of them. Most of the time that was just connectors, but I am a little bit special and I would take the fuse boxes out of them because these things are actually pretty cool. This box specifically is out of a newer Toyota Tundra, and there are a couple of very cool things that they do on these boxes that make them perfect for what I'm about to do. Now I get it. Looking at this thing, it looks like we're probably going in the wrong direction if we're trying to make this a little bit smaller. But here's the cool part. They're modular. Now the nice thing is that since I'm not building a late 2000s Tundra, I don't have like most of the circuits that they need to control with that giant fuse box. So I can just pick and choose the ones that I do want to control and make a fuse box just out of these components. I just have to make something to house them. So my first step to kick off this build is to build something that these can clip on into. So I got to work stripping all the contents out of the original Tundra fuse box until I'm left with just the shell that holds everything in. Then I went on to cut out one of the slots for the relay holders to make sure that I can get an accurate representation of what one looks like. And after a little bit of cleanup, this is what we're left with. This is going to allow me to reverse engineer the mount for this so that I can make my own and implement it in my own fuse box. So now I got to go and grab my 3D scanner so I can scan this in and digitally recreate it so that I can build off of it and build a new fuse box from it. Hey, you get that 3D? Yeah! Hell was going on in there? Now was that skit entirely put into place for me to beat around the bush about the fact that I don't actually have a 3D scanner? Yes. Yes, it was. I don't know what to tell you. Those things are expensive and I can't afford one yet. But what I can afford is a set of Harbor Freight calipers and like 3 hours of my time. And with that, we are left with this. This is pretty much completely reverse engineered from our original fuse holder. You can see we've got pretty much every single face in there. And we've also got the relay version of it. This will house both the 2 relay versions and the single large relays. So this will be perfect. This will just be modular. We'll just be able to add this in wherever we need. But for now, let's get these 3D printed so we can test the fit. As you guys can see, we printed out 2 different housings for this, and that is because the 2 components that we're going to be using are the fuse bricks and the relay bricks. Now the nice part is that we've got double small relay bricks and single large relay bricks, but they both fit in the same enclosure. So if we designed everything correctly, this guy should just clip right on in. And it's the same thing with the relay ones. Or a nice little clip in. So now that we've designed these 2 components, we can merge them together on the computer and create a fuse box that houses all of the stuff that we need for the Rx7. And now that I've got that all designed on my computer, we can go ahead and grab this little guy, and this is what we're left with. Now as you guys can see, this guy has 4 little relay bricks, 1 fuse brick, and 1 spot for our 40 amp circuit breaker that we're going to be using for the fans. Now that we got the top of the fuse box made, we can start working on the bottom and what that's going to look like. Now for that, I kind of need to worry about how we're going to get the power out of the fuse box to the rest of the car that needs it. And for that, I'm going to be using Deutsch DT connectors that are going to be going to my bumper harness and all of the rest of the stuff on the front of the car that needs power. Now since I'm planning on integrating these into the fuse box, I should probably get these designed in CAD. Now don't get it twisted, I don't know at all what I'm doing right now. I am literally just taking measurements and breaking this connector down into its most simplistic basic shapes and 3D modeling that in a way that is as accurate as I can get to it. Basically, I'm just trying to get a good representation of what the connector is like so that we can design stuff around it. I'm not really too worried about it being perfect, it just has to be good enough. Now that I've got my DT connectors modeled in CAD, it only took a few minutes to model the bottom of the box. You can see it's got 3 little slots for our DT connectors to just slide right into. Now this will be able to connect to the rest of my harness going out to all the outputs. And this is going to be what our completed fuse box is going to look like. As you can see, it's got everything we need up here. It's got all the connectors we need down here. And this should fit in the Rx7. So now all that I have left is figuring out a way to get both of the case halves together and then making a lid for it. And this should be our completed fuse box. This should be perfect. Now I'm not saying that taping the 2 halves together is the right way to put them together, but for the prototype phase, it's gonna work. So you can see we've got our fuse box completely populated with everything that we need in it. And it's approximately the same cross-sectional area as our old fuse box, but we have some pretty major changes to it. As we can see, this fuse box only really houses fuses and a couple circuit breakers, where this one has all of the same amount of fuses that this one could have, along with 6 relays and a circuit breaker. So this packs a lot more functionality into about the same amount of space. Also, all of these wires and everything are just exposed in this thing, where on this one they're all encased and pretty much going to be kept away from all of the elements. We've got waterproof connectors that are going to be going into that, so we won't have to worry about water getting inside of the fuse box or affecting any of our wires. So this guy should be a good amount better than our old setup. That being said, next week we're going to be taking this thing over to the shop and getting a test fit in the car, see if we have to do any tweaks or any revisions to the design at all. And hopefully this fits in there real nice and looks good in the car, but we won't know until we're there. That being said, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.